in your life. And so I don't want to focus so much on dentistry per se today, because I think we're speaking to probably many, many entrepreneurs or people who are seeking to create more freedom. And I hate to use the word balance. There's not always a good balance, but focusing on what's going to take them to a life of more freedom, more liberty, more autonomy. And those are the principles that you teach. So let's start there. Let's start a little bit with mindset and where that begins as a framework to everything else that leads into more of that freedom and autonomy.
Yeah, well, first of all, Dr. David Phelps, thank you for having me. I'm honored. And, quite frankly, I can't imagine doing anything else more important and valuable than this today with you. And I was just, grateful that you felt I was worthy of the being this final guest for this Celebrating Freedom Week, CelebrateFreedomWeek.com. I wasn't surprised at all when you decided to do this Freedom Week live stream, because it really is just who you are. So, it does all start with mindset. And I will just say, I've never met anybody who is more dedicated to working on mindset and also making freedom, approachable, realistic, not only possible, but having a plan to do it than you and what you have done with Freedom Founders. So, quite frankly, anybody listening to this, it's the right place to be, because while today we're honoring people who have made our freedom possible, it's sacrilege if you aren't taking that freedom and doing something with it and elevating. So who better than you, but, I would say us, than to help facilitate other people's freedoms, because that's really the testament of what liberation is all about. So if you don't believe you can achieve it, you're not going to. All of us have a glass ceiling over our heads that we are afraid to break through, and it becomes self-limiting. And I think the very first aspect of freedom is to realize that it's a freedom or liberty is about the ability to pursue greater than what you are today. And I think what holds people back is this idea of having to work harder or be a slave to, or, like you feel guilty about it almost, instead of realizing that the freedom to choose your work, to choose your income, to choose who you do it with, all these things are ways that we can embody this idea, of freedom. And so it is true that saying, if you love what you do, you're not really working. And one of my favorite quotes is, I don't have the quote in here, but it's something to the effect that you can tell a true master of their craft when their work and their play look one and the same. Mm-hmm. Like that, isn't that life? Isn't that the pinnacle of life? And, so anyhow, I just think that's why we're here.
Well, getting to that place, as you said, Scott, a lot of it depends on how you think about yourself, what's possible. I'll speak for myself. I didn't always think the way I do today many years ago. And I think that's common. It depends on the environment you grew up in. Some people have grown up in maybe very entrepreneurial families and maybe have a little bit more of that insight into their future early on. Others maybe more traditional. Nothing wrong with either one. I've always been a bit of a rule follower. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but to be, I'm going to say, I'm compliant. I follow society's rules. But you can go too far with that. And there was a place in my life where I was following those rules and going down the path to the profession that I lived in for many years, in the profession that you are so adept at helping change how the dynamics of their lives and their business and practices. So I was following that pathway, Scott, and doing well by the kind of the constructs of the industry. Well, this is how you do it, right? It's kind of laid out in front of you. Here's the pathway. Here's how you do it. And so you model yourself after everybody else. Well, when I met you, gosh, it's probably been 15, 16, 17 years ago. I met you and I could tell right away that you were different in a good way. And that I noticed that respectfully, you questioned a lot of the status quo. And I really was attracted to that thinking, because I'd always kind of followed the status quo and done okay in life, done fine, but I didn't have that freedom. I didn't have that autonomy. I still had those dreads Sunday evening about going to work the next day. And that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about actually every day for me now is a joyous day. I don't care what day of the week it is. How can we help people shift or adapt that mindset? Where do people start? I mean, is it reading books or podcasts? Is it finding mentors or coaches, finding tribes, communities, or a combination?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for saying that. Look, the feelings are all mutual. So we could certainly say the same about each other, and that's why we have such a great bond and friendship. You know, the first place I think always is to look internal. Like it's not, yeah, books, podcasts. Actually, I have my books, but I have actually your book, your Freedom book that you wrote behind me. I keep it there every day as a reminder. I think, David, here's the key is it all comes back to gratitude.
Mm.
And I think that's the beginning and the end of all things because, the people, I have this little piece of artwork here, which is supposed to symbol the people whose lives have been lost to create the freedom, what America is. But it's like, that they didn't do that for nothing. Okay. They believed in something. But they were grateful for the opportunity. We're talking to each other today, which we could celebrate a lot of things in addition to 249 years of America. But we also have a record enrollment in every aspect of the armed forces and the military ever. And it's not because that people believe in what was. That's true, but they believe in what can be.
Yes.
And so I think that life is really should be futuristic and live forward, but it begins with gratitude. And the reason I say that is because one of the most impactful sayings I ever remember from Zig Ziglar, it was that most people, they are at home worrying about their business and what they should be doing. In other words, guilty for not working. And then tomorrow, everyone is at the business, okay, thinking about home and feeling guilty for the people they left behind or who they're not with. And so people always live at this dichotomy of wishing they were somewhere else, with somewhere else, or with someone, or doing something else, instead of just being present and being grateful for that. And so, one of the things that it's you and I both get, and I think all of our members who were privileged to lead, but they're smart to be listening to us, okay, is that you have to make the work worth it. It's work no matter what. And so if is the work worth it? Is the sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice, worth it? Well, it depends on what happens to the future of the country. But is our work, if it's our sacrifice, we could all choose to do anything else. And speaking to entrepreneurs and doctors, whatever, they could be successful basically doing anything else because they've made that choice. So if we're always thinking greener grass, you're always going to lose yourself in it. And so I think just being grateful for the opportunity, being proud of who you are, and then honoring the work and sacrifice in whatever degree. Thank goodness for us, it's not life and death. And for whatever degree, honoring that work by making it worth it. And part of that is being aligned with your core principles, with your beliefs, with your freedom founders and your 5 levels of freedom and the freedom pyramid, I think you call it, it gives you purpose, knowing that you are working to elevate yourself in each of those different categories. And I like to think, we do the similar things too. So I don't know whether that directly answers the question, but now also you have to be inspired. Okay. And let's just face it. Most people, their lives can become kind of complacent, mundane. Like I always say, the status quo is your status quo. That may be, if you're hanging around Dr. David Phelps and me, your status quo today is beyond your wildest imagination a decade ago, but it's still the status quo today.
Yeah.
And so we have to say, what's next? Because staying, I think life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I always loved that pursuit. The point was not if we all stay where we are, everything expires.
Yes.
Everything becomes outdated. And so I want to just go back to something you said. Yeah, you're a rule follower. Actually, we're the same. Like I love a rule follower. I like a list. I wouldn't call them rules, but I like, give me the action steps. I'm going to follow them. Like I want to plan and I'm going to crush it but because we're both driven people. But the typical plan is meant to keep you into a state of mediocrity because everything serves the average. And there's nothing wrong with average. It just ain't us. And so if we're looking around at everybody else, that you're going to be limited in terms of where your potential could be. So we have to break the mold. We have to bust out of the box, and we have to be around people and following people who aspire you to want to be better, greater, more true to yourself.
I love your focus on gratitude. It's so important. So too often, and I've been following this camp many times, is I want something more because, again, society says you can have it, or the grass is greener over there. You said it, both ways. You could be with your family and feel guilty about not being at work, and vice versa, being at work and gosh, I should be with my family, and all that guilt. But just having the gratitude, which anybody in this country, either born here or an immigrant, is blessed in a way that you don't have it in very many other countries. So having that gratitude. The other aspect I know that you're really good about, because you live this way, Scott, is not only who we surround ourselves with from a peer group or a mentorship basis, but the people that are helping us drive our mission, our business, our focus is so critical to build that culture with newly learned leadership. I got this incoming text this morning. I'm just going to read it because it was so good. It's one of my team members today, 4th of July, Independence Day, sent this. Happy 4th. Thanks for teaching me what true freedom is and for being examples of freedom in my life. That's one of my team members. Now, that to me is very inspirational, because we always think about we're building a business, to serve other people, to make products and to make the world better and solve problems. But you can't do it by yourself. I mean, there's very few things you can do by yourself. And as you said, otherwise you hit that glass ceiling. So we need to surround ourselves with people that help us carry that mission forward. But at the same time, we have to walk the talk. And I felt like that incoming message to me today was like, well, that's exactly what I want to hear, is that we're serving a number of different people. We have to serve our team, our staff first, because if we don't have the values imbued there, the culture of a team that understands what we're about, why we do it, it's a tough road. So talk a little bit about that, because you're very good at helping your clients build that within their own teams.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. Congratulations for that proof of concept right there. The first thing is it goes back to the principle of self-reliance, what built our country, and not being dependent on anything else. And even our country is about not being dependent upon it, and it being something that lifts you up and gives you opportunity. I firmly believe the most significant part of every generation is give the next generation a head start, a leg up, not entitlement, not a handout, but a leg up. Like they should start further than what we are, because we've taken them further. So if we show them this, then now they know that's possible. If they start there, well, then they can see further than us. And it's all just about continuing to see further. And I think you have to do that with your team. We call it the daytime family. But you have to do it with your family. Okay. And, I think everybody has their own approach. For me, I remind my family. So, sure, if there's work to be done, you say, well, we could not do this work. And then what would we give up as a result? So the sacrifice of work provides some form of reward or opportunity or what. And if we don't do the work, there is also a consequence or something that comes with that. So it's just always understanding that. And it goes to show where people are trying to elude, avoid, suppress, the effort required, the work that's necessary. And, one of our good buddies and mentors, I don't know that it's was his thing, but he always remembered Dan Kennedy, responsibility equals reward. Reward equals responsibility. And you have to love both. And so when you're talking about living this and lifting up the team, the first thing is listen, okay, I believe in you to be able to grow and become greater than what you are today. And that's not just inside of the practice or our team, that's in your life. And we have to have integrity with that. There has to be an alignment between these two things. And then the other aspect of that is just generosity. And, we call it lifestyle for all. And one of my, ideas is that not waiting for someday, but enjoying every day. And I think that anybody can look forward to a vacation, to a holiday, to all these things. And it's like, you just, that's not great. Okay. Like we can honor and celebrate these moments, birthday, anniversary, Christmas, 4th of July. If we're waiting for those things, then, you really got it all backwards. And so, especially in my case, to our clients, talking about lifestyle, and lifestyle is not waiting for it. It's about enjoying it every day along the way. And so we want people to do that. And so I just think that, the patient number one, in our case, if we're speaking dentistry, but in entrepreneurship, patient number one is the people who make it possible. And if you don't lift those people up with you, then, eventually there's going to be regrets, resentments, whatever. People are going to try to get away with things instead of doubling down. And you just gave a great example. I have people doing stuff today too, and it's like, that's just who you are. And you have to breed that kind of culture. Otherwise, if you have to feel like you're looking over your shoulder all the time or questioning or wondering, it just doesn't work.
Exactly. Well, just a short break here. If you're enjoying this conversation, enjoy the conversations this week, my team has created a resource box, actual physical box, not just digital. If you go to celebratefreedomweek.com, there's an opportunity to opt in, and a lot of resources that we put there have included people from this week, including Scott Manning, resources that he has provided graciously, books of his, all inside this box. And we're happy to send it out to you as a Freedom Week celebration. So that's there. Also, if you'd like to learn more about Scott, Dental Success Today is his primary website today. You can go there and learn more about Scott and what he's doing, primarily, again, with professional practice owners. But so much of the principles, as you're discovering today, apply no matter who you are. And we want to make this really universally applicable for anybody who is pursuing their dreams and their vision of what a lifestyle, career, business looks like within the confines of their family and what's important with gratitude. Also within that book, you mentioned Dan Kennedy, one of our favorite mentors. So I had the privilege, and you mentioned the book. Thank you, Scott. Own Your Freedom, that I co-wrote with Dan just a couple of years ago. And that's also included in the resource box if you care to go there. So Scott, let's go to a word that is really, I think, embellished, not always in a great way, but maybe there's some attributes we can provide for people. The term is to scale up. Let's scale, right? Because scale sounds good. To me, that means let's grow. And I've seen, and you've seen many people get in the trap of, well, bigger is better. Sometimes it is for certain people, maybe Jeff Bezos, maybe Bill Gates, maybe scaling up and making some big has been very beneficial to the world, and maybe to them as well. Don't know. But how do you interpret the word scale when people may come to you, and how do you help them look at that maybe with a not with a different perspective? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And by the way, for heaven's sake, everybody take advantage of this gift. I know what Dr. Phelps and his team put together is always extraordinary, but this is exactly what it's about. And quite literally, he wrote the book on freedom. He has a plan for that. Actually, my book, The 4 Freedoms of Dentistry, was inspired by him. And I, maybe took a little too many liberties, but internal to the practice, different things. So, I'm so glad you brought it up, because to me, it is I think there's, aside from just having integrity, and I love the book, The 4 Agreements, lots of fours, but obviously I love the book, The 4 Agreements, to just be impeccable with your word. So the most important thing for today's topic is this: You have to define what freedom is to you, and then you just have to live that. So for some people, and I'm not going to go through the freedom pyramid because that's Dave is the expert at that. So, but health to us is the ultimate freedom. Health without wealth, well, you probably need some wealth too, but wealth without health can't happen. You talk about time freedom. We did an entire interview or webinar together all about time freedom. So I think those things, you have to really define it though, because otherwise scaling up to what point? And first of all, in all of our businesses that we work with, because we know the people that we work with, and whether we're talking professional practice or we're talking businesses, very rarely is bigger better. Very rarely, because bigger comes with more burden. That's the deal. And sometimes that is called overhead. Sometimes that is called people. Sometimes that is called marketing demand. I don't want to be too dental specific here, but there's people that chase these bright, shiny objects of these big cases, and they require then first of all, the lab fees are high. The marketing to be able to get this needle in a haystack patient gets bigger, bigger, bigger. Pretty soon, okay, you are making more at a fraction of the practice than you are at this. And, you're completely lost the thing that to me is freedom, which is peace of mind and autonomy of choice. And so I just think that you have to be very mindful. I can't imagine anybody here who's interested in listening to a very smart man like you, it sees that scaling up of anything other than time, other than, now to me, what is money? Money is like, I call business like the vehicle to take you places in your life. You can have different types of vehicles, different types of businesses. But if you don't know where you're going, there's no point in the vehicle. And then also in the life is the journey, you have to have gas or fuel. We could say maybe electricity too, but you say you have to have, that's money. Money is the fuel. Money it's like food to the body. And so it's not the main point, but it is something that helps, facilitate it. And so I just think that's what matters. I think scaling is such an elusive concept. And so what I was going to say is the two greatest disciplines, number one is a discipline to know what your bullseye is and like not to get deterred from that, not start looking at other people's targets. And you have your freedom number, you have things that you talk about, I have things I talk about. So, and then the discipline to, once you have that, is just to stay in the sweet spot. Okay. And just be undeterred by distractions, by other things, and then just to rinse and repeat. So I think the discipline to define it and then just to rinse and repeat it, like those are the keys, and not to question what it takes, not to keep, you can like say, how can we do it better? Or how can this be worth more to me? But here's the thing. You can also revisit your life, your life plan. Too many people make decisions about the future based on the past. I think we have to make decisions on the future where we're going, not where we've been. And then you can revisit it, whether that's every year or every few years or whatever, because your life should evolve. Your goals should be different, but you have to make those decisions very deliberately. And that's why being part of a community, a group like Freedom Founders, we have things for similarly in not in Freedom Founders in the same way, but if you're still actively in private practice, but just you have to be around that, because otherwise you don't know. But even being around other people, you have tendency to drift and look at other people and be inspired by them, but you're not trying to emulate them, because you have your own life, and being true to yourself and knowing your compass, to me is the key. Not scaling up for the sake of growing, but more in terms of thinking where you want to go in the future, and then what does success look like to you. And only one aspect of it would be financial, and it just that's really it. Going harder to grow and get more. You have to ask yourself, at what expense? What is the investment necessary to get more, and is it worth it? And it's like, you were just talking to me the other day about people looking at all these, these sexy returns and stuff like that. Say, yeah, at what risk, at what, price paid, versus knowing that you're good where you are, and then just nurturing that grass, that acres of diamonds,
yes,
nurturing that. and not being that's what requires the most discipline. That's the deal.
Absolutely. Well, I love what you said about specificity and defining your target. And I look at defining the target encompassing both the business and personal life. We have to. That's what it's about. And so getting the specificity around that is difficult at first. If you've never really done it, and you just been like many of us, just a hard charger, very driven, thinking that's the right way to go, you'll never have a focus on a target that's going to make sense. And particularly for those who are in marriage partnerships, it's very important to have those conversations because again, we're different people. We marry different people, and that's what makes a blend. But if we don't have conversations together about what does all this look like, then we're just on this hamster wheel. And so I love the fact that you talked about specificity of that target, defining that, and then redefining it. It's kind of amazing to me that people that are in business have, an accountant or CPA, and at worst, there's usually like one meeting a year where they sit down and go, well, here's how much you owe. That's the worst kind, right?
Yeah.
But then there's also, for a good tax planner, a business advisor, you need to have regular meetings. So we're pretty good about doing something along those lines for our business, right? We'll do that because, well, we're supposed to, and we have to pay taxes. We want to make sure we're complying there. But what about the bigger picture? And that's what you're bringing about, Scott, is why are we not, or why don't we find a place where we can have those same regular check-ins, checkups? And that's where we need accountability. That's where being a part of a tribe of community that's led by a leader that understands these tenets is so important. And when you do that, then you start to see what the roadmap looks like. And then you can pivot, to your point, as needed because life changes. Our focal points change. We find different priorities, which is all part of it. But if we don't have that target and keep making sure that target is well defined, then we'll be off course like forever.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's just, you're exactly right. And I just love this point. And what I call it the life business. No matter what the business is, but in my case, and I think some of the majority of Freedom Founders members are dentists or doctors in some way, but any entrepreneur, we're not, it's really the life business. And then inside of that is whatever we do. And also I think I look at my people as life athletes. And like, if you think about an athlete, all the different things that they're doing, they're reviewing the past to learn from it, but they're mostly planning the future, but they're also caring for themselves. They're investing in their well-being and their health and all these points. And so we get so caught up in the idea of, and I mean, David and I love making money and helping others, and we are unabashed capitalists and believers in prosperity. But I think some people get caught up in this idea of that's what they're doing. Like they're making money. We're making life, right? And however you're earning your money, and whatever money you're earning has to be really looked at into the greater scheme of things. And you're really, you really are huge on the timepiece. And I would just say, I started my, life coaching, which is basically what I do, just picking the niche and sort of the format of this idea that the only thing that really matters in life are the people you meet and the experiences you have. Now, money can facilitate those things, but you can't do those things without time. Time is the only asset that you can't renew. And I firmly believe everything else can be made up except for time. Money can be made up. Technically relationships can be like, time is the thing. And so you have to really keep things in context and have a life plan, what you're saying, and how everything else fits in the context of that. That's what freedom is. Because if you get caught up on the treadmill of life, grinding it out, you overcommit yourself financially or otherwise, it's the opposite of freedom. It's the opposite of independence. And really, what we're here to talk about. So that's what I would say.
So Scott, let's bring it full circle back around to where we started with mindset. And for those who are listening today, who are ready to begin reclaiming some of their freedoms, like now, like tomorrow, what 3 practical shifts would you recommend, maybe across the spectrum of mindset, structure, community? What could they look for as some points of reference to start moving forward to reclaim some of their autonomy and freedom?
I'll try to run it real quick here, and I know the time limit. So,
oh, you're fine. No, you're fine. There's no.
First of all, gratitude for what is, just for the opportunity to breathe, and in this case, be in America. Okay, whether an outcome is good or bad, just be grateful for outcome. Okay, next, don't settle. Don't the status quo. We will always get what we accept, what we tolerate, right? And so I have this little mantra of where your focus goes. In this case, the practice or life grows, but where your focus goes, everything else, grows. So that's where it is. So wherever you put your focus. So pragmatically, what I want you to do is at some point, Monday, I like Sunday, but you look out at the week ahead and build a battle plan and allocate for all compartments of time. And most importantly, value your personal time, or what I would call your think time, your creative time, more than anything else. Okay. So the business time gets blocked, and it's often very regimented, and then the personal time gets just nebulous, thrown in a blob. So you have to value that, and then also make sure you have time to do absolutely nothing, so that you have an opportunity to say, "Oh, I wonder what nothing would be like." It might be read a book, it might be go for a walk, it might be take a nap. But you cannot fill every aspect of time, or you're never giving yourself a chance to grow, to expand, and to see what is. If everything is out. Now, the next piece is I want you to go forward. In this case, July. I consider July a new January. I like to live 2 years in one. You get twice the life, and it's all for free. So basically say January, if this were January all over again, okay, not resolutions, because that would mean you need to resolve something. Instead, just what new commitments would you make? What commitments would you double down on? What commitments would you refocus? Okay, that maybe you've fallen off. So where do you want to be by the end of the year? 6 months from today. Today, you are starting a journey. Thanks to David here today. Yeah, and you're building a bridge. And so you're continuing moving on the bridge to the future. 6 months from now, you're other side of that bridge. Okay, what do you want it to look like when you get there? And so reverse engineer that backwards. And these are things that you can immediately start doing. And then the mindset piece is simple. Just hold yourself accountable to no negative self-talk about you or others, and zero negativity. Just be annoyingly positive, okay? And until the point at which people complain about you being optimistic and positive, you're not doing it enough. Okay? Because you let bad shit creep in, and it takes root. So you have to be very strong on that. And then I think coupled with that, we all talk about immunity to criticism, but you have to be ruthless with the things you believe in. Not afraid to say no. Okay, own your life and your responsibilities. And the more that you are, pacifying, pandering to, saying yes, and taking on commitments of other people, this is all just a security blanket. It shows self-doubt and lack of personal value. Okay, if you truly hold yourself in the type of esteem you should, okay, you'll be very fine. Okay, brushing off responsibilities that people want to place on your lap. Okay, because you are the ultimate hierarchy. On this screen, people listening to us, you are creators, right? You are the source. You're the nucleus, the core origin of your life. Not talking about spiritually and God and stuff, but for you. So if you water yourself down, everybody else gets watered down. The only thing you can do is elevate yourself up, and that will bring everyone else up. And so I don't know how tangible those were, but that's what I would say. Reverse engineer, battle plan ahead, always begins with the mindset, grateful, and then the belief in abundance. Here's the best news of the day. For us, talking about freedom, okay, we can make more. So be generous, let it flow. Don't hoard and hang on. Okay, let it go from the past, from the present, okay, to get to where you're going. I just want to share with you this quote I thought was so fitting. This is my July 4th quote, 2025, my daily calendar. I am not a has-been. I am a will be. And today, 249 years of America, okay, we have so much to honor and celebrate. But all of that is just the foundation. Okay? The founding fathers is basically what are we building from here forward? And we have never, literally, have never lived in a greater time in America. And so, like, for heaven's sake, like, do something with it. This is your opportunity to mold the clay of the future and not be a has been, no matter how great has been for you, but be a will be what are you becoming, and to me that's what it is about.
Well, Scott, that was brilliant. Really, it was brilliant. You're like Chat GBT, except much better. It's like I hit prompt, and you give me you give the best of the best, and that's who you are. These are principles and attributes that you've carried and built throughout your life, and I know because I've been around you enough to know that when something comes up, you've got a principle that will set a foundation for whatever the potential action, behavior, mindset shift needs to be. And I think you laid it out very nicely there at the end. I appreciate that so much. Again, Scott Manning with dentalsuccesstoday.com. For those of you who were catching this at the end, we put together a resource book that contains one of my books, Scott's books, and other resources from this week. You can go to celebratefreedomweek.com for that resource package. And happy Independence Day, Scott. I think there's someone in the background that would like to maybe get some sparklers out. I'm not sure, but whenever it's appropriate, whatever you're going to do with that young, beautiful lady that is part of your life, go have fun today.
But thank you. Well, you do the same. And I just want to say thank you, Dr. David Phelps, for building Freedom Founders and giving so many people, countless people, and a trickle-down effect. I know people who have been part of Freedom Founders, and they take the principles, you teach them how, to their families. They build living legacies. They incorporate and lift up other generations, conversations that their parents never had with them, okay, and they wouldn't have known to have if it wasn't for you. So, I'm honored to be here and be a supporter and a follower and admirer of everything you're doing. But people are smart to be with people who give them permission to succeed, to dream, to do and become more. But permission is not enough. You have to have a plan and a place. Mm-hmm. And that's what you provide. And, I really just honored to be here with you.
Well, thank you. I learned it from some of the best. Thanks for being here, Scott.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
America.
Take care, everybody.